So I've torn my pec. So how do you know if you've torn your pec? Now the reality is that at the moment basically 3.5 weeks ago, I wasn't bench pressing, which is very common for a pec tear. I was actually at Ninja Warrior, and it wasn't I was training for Ninja Warrior or I was doing any competition with Ninja Warrior. It was my nephew's 11th birthday party, and a few adults were having obviously a go on the equipment, and it was really good fun. Not something I would normally do, of course. Complete the course, all good, all hunky-dory, good fun. Rested for maybe 10 minutes because I was exhausted, and then saw the first piece of equipment, which is it can be done in 2 different ways. The first way was like you're on boxes which rock up and down. So on the first rungs you're kind of going along, you have to go uphill, then downhill to the next box. So I'd done that earlier, and then there was a one where on the sides of the boxes there are prongs. These prongs have got balls on the end, and then you've got gymnastics rings which you hook on. This time you swing sideways, obviously having to go sideways and up and catch on to the next one at a higher level. And this is where the injury happened. So I was swinging wide and up and high, missed the catch, swung back down, went to take the weight back on my left arm and felt a big tear in the shoulder. So I dropped to the floor and I tensed the pec, and I realized there was a deformity there, which is the classic one you see when the lower pec is actually torn at the tendon. It wasn't actually that painful, which is interesting because obviously people think it would be really, really painful. Now, what you've got to remember is with structures of the body, you've got muscle, which has got lots of nerve supply, lots of blood supply. So if you tear a muscle, it's a lot more painful than a healthy tendon that's torn. Obviously, if you have a degenerative tendon, it can be very painful because there's a lot of processes occurring in that tendon because you've got a chronic problem. But this was an acute overload from a trauma kind of an event. So the tendon is healthy to begin with, and then it just massively overloaded and overstretched. So the mechanism of injury obviously was coming down all the way to my body plus momentum swinging into a really big stretched position, which is actually a common mechanism for tendon injury. Fast, high impact, high load under high stretch. So that is essentially how it would occur. That could happen obviously in various activities, like there was an NFL player who was trying to break through the line and his arm was behind him and a player was pushing this way. So it's fast into a stretch position, and therefore he tore his pec. The lower pec obviously is the one that happened. So the upper pec is basically the clavicular head. So this goes up and attaches to the clavicle, the collarbone. And then you've got the sternal head, which is the bigger part, which obviously comes from the sternum and comes across and attaches up onto the humerus. The tendon inserts like a U shape. The front end is a stronger tendon, hence why that part is fine on me. Obviously it can rupture on both, but it's the lower head that is where the suspicion of rupture is. Obviously I am waiting on an MRI result at the moment through the NHS. I had the MRI done at about 1.5 weeks after injury, and it's another week and a day I think till I get the results of that, and that's going to determine the extent of it. I have a high suspicion that it's a full rupture of that particular tendon because of the deformity that I saw. I went to accident emergency on the day just because it gets you into the system quicker. They did an x-ray. They found no avulsion fracture, because sometimes you can pull with the tendon hard enough and pull the tip of bone off on its attachment on the humerus. Essentially, I knew that wasn't going to be the case just because I felt a tear in the tissue, and obviously that was proven correct. They examined me and they were kind of thinking, well, we need to send you to fracture clinic and with a view to MRI. So obviously I went to the fracture clinic probably at 4 days after the injury. They examined me. They were unsure themselves. At the time, the pec was very inhibited, so it's hard to contract the pec to see that deformity as it pulls the tendon across and bunches the muscle up. So it wasn't as obvious perhaps as it might have been the time when I did it. By then some bruising had come out, so I had some bruising on the humerus but nowhere else. What was interesting is they were saying that there's not a lot of bruising, And again, as I mentioned before, pain is not that high in tendons that are healthy, that are torn traumatically relative to muscle, and same with blood supply. So blood supply in muscle is very high, so it bleeds a lot more bruising, whereas tendon, not such a good blood supply structure, so less bleeding basically. The bleeding was, or the bruising was only on the humerus, nothing on the chest, hence not a muscle tear. Obviously the tendon doesn't come until you get to your armpit and across. So again, this is why it's suspicious of a tendon tear, not a muscle tear, and obviously with that deformity at the beginning. But obviously by that point, they were unsure. So they put me in for the MRI. So the MRI, obviously I got done probably at like a week and a half after, and then obviously waiting for the results. So pending them results is going to govern what happens next. Now there is always a chance that there's a partial tear. So some of the fibers of the tendon have snapped, but some are still attached. I'm not entirely certain. It could be. If it is, it's more superficial to deep. So it sort of the higher level part of the pec seems to have disappeared, and it's sort of gone through. Now, obviously, at this point, I'm in the unknown quantity, and I'm just documenting this, and I'll do future videos as I go along the process, because if it is that I need surgery, it's a bit of a lengthy process to rehab it 100%. So it's a good opportunity for me to do a video or a series of videos on this. But what did I do in the first day? So the first day after injury is I didn't have full range of movement because of obviously the damage done and the pain from that and the body in that sort of fight or flight mode. But I felt like, you know, at the end of the day, I could train around it, and I tried to modify my training. So the very next day I trained. The day after was actually a Monday, and International Chest Day, of course. So I actually trained, I didn't train the pecs, but I trained a lot of other muscles. Now I had to shorten the range of motion. I couldn't get my arm very high up at all. So I did like lying lateral raises in a very shortened range, which meant that I could load it up. But with no pain. I monitored my pain during it, after it, and the next day. There was no adverse effects. Obviously each day as well, I started to gradually coax movement back into play, just trying to get a bit of movement back into the shoulder, because if it is going to need surgery, it's going to be immobilized post-operatively for 4 to 6 weeks. So you don't want to go into that with a stiff shoulder to begin with. You want to make sure that shoulder is moving as well as humanly possible. So I got the movement back. Probably to get full range probably took me about a week to get my range back. But each day I trained around it. So I trained leg day the next day, trained that pretty good, was even able to do Romanian deadlifts with a reasonable weight. And I started to coax into stuff. And then I even started to apply a bit of very, very easy pec work in there. I could work the upper pec when I sort of created a bias on that. So I could do like a cable upward motion, not a downward one. I could do that. I started with the first week of that was quite light, but now I can do that to my normal weights, because it's not really loading the lower pec. And obviously if it isn't attached, I'm not going to do any harm to it. Even if I did, I still can't, well, I can just about, like what we now 3.5 weeks, I can just about do a full range press up, but I can feel the strain there. It feels really odd. It doesn't particularly hurt, but it feels stressed and strained. But obviously I wanted to make sure I was at least trying to activate the pec and use the pec, so it wasn't going to atrophy as much. I even used the muscle stim, but not on a training setting on the pec as well. So on the lower pec, I put the neuromuscular electrical stimulator on just to get some circulation, just to get a bit of pulsing in there, but nothing that was going to pull forcefully on the tendon. Like I said, if it's not attached, it's not so problematic anyway. And I basically worked on it in that sort of way. So like I said, I've got the range back now. I can do a press up now, although it doesn't feel normal at all. Lat work is harder to work around. So anything that's sort of pulling downwards this way is obviously a lot of lower pec. It took me a while before I could do anything above here, like tricep overheads and stuff like that. Even training my neck flexors is very difficult to do with my normal weight, because I use a 20 kilogram weight plate. So lying on my back, I just can't get it over the top to get it onto my head. This point here is the point which it doesn't like. And like I say, I'm just trying to work and train around it, obviously do cardio and various things. So I'm basically making the best of a bad situation and keeping everything else as good as possible. Obviously the MRI will be coming soon, so obviously post MRI I'll go through what they found, what this means, what's going to happen next. It, like I say, is a bit up in the air, but I'm very, very sure that this is likely the case. Like I say, with the deformity and with the nature of where the bruising was, the level of pain or lack of, all indicates this was the case, the mechanism of injury as well. And obviously how it feels in there and everything else as well. So I'm pretty sure, and if we look at research on this clinical assessment, which is what I've effectively done on myself, is very accurate. And MRIs aren't as accurate as you might think. They obviously are accurate, but they aren't always 100%. So it will be interesting, obviously, to see what's found off that MRI. So basically at the moment, my plan of action is to continue to train around it, not to not train at all, to make sure the range is good. And then hopefully as we move forwards, we know definitively the plan of action. Like I say, it's going to be a process because it'll be immobilized if the surgery is the thing to be done. Not sure yet, of course, how quickly this would occur. There is evidence suggesting if it's early repair, things are great. It's a very good and successful repair. They basically are sort of bolting it back into the bone, into the humerus effectively. They have to slice you open at the front, just above the armpit. So it's not keyhole, but it's not like hugely invasive, and it's a day surgery as well. So obviously that's going to take some recovery. You can't be pulling on that tendon by contracting the muscle, so it's immobilized in a sling. You can't drive, of course. And then obviously after that you can start to get it going. While it's in the sling, I plan to actually do some things that probably most people wouldn't do. I'm going to discuss this with the consultant if this comes to this, and I'll keep you up to date on all of these ongoing things which I'm going to try. But at the moment, I'm pretty functional. I can work, I can drive, I can train in the gym, I can do a lot of things to very normal levels, just certain things I can't do. And it's because the body is very clever. There are a lot of other muscles that can do the job between them of the lower pec. And the body is built this way on purpose. So it's very, very good at getting around problems. But like I say, I'm training around it, working things as best I can. And yeah, obviously when I see them for the consultation for the MRI results and find out what the plan is, I will probably do another video and we'll see where things are up to, and I will just keep you up to date along this process. So I just thought it'd be an interesting thing to see how a physio would manage their own condition and you know, take it from there. I'll probably do a lengthy article on this at some point as well, probably at the end, to summarize everything and things, a few extra bits and pieces too. But anyway, that's it for this video, and I'll see you next time.